Hi everyone, Anthony Fantano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a letter from a fan. Dear Anthony, I love your reviews, even if I don't always agree with them, but I guess that's what makes them so much more fun to watch them. Thank you. So here's the thing. I've been trying to get more into experimental and avant-garde music, such as Lowercase, free jazz, some drone, especially noise, and others that fall into the spectrum, but I'm having some difficulty actually appreciating them for what they are. I mean, I don't hate them really. I know which genres I like and which ones I'm not so appreciative of. It's just that I don't get it at all. Now, I've done some research on these genres in hopes of understanding where these artists are coming from and what made them create this kind of music. I've even asked some of my friends for some tips on how to appreciate more challenging music. However, it just makes me feel more alienated and confused when I try to listen to them. And half the time, I don't even understand what they're trying to convey. I know I don't have to force myself into liking anything, but I partly do just for the joy of it, the challenge, and I do want to understand and appreciate. But again, I just don't get it. With that being said, do you have any tips and ideas as to how to like this kind of music? Do I just need to listen to it over and over again until I get it? And that would probably drive me mad, honestly. How do you personally get yourself into this kind of music and enjoy its nuances? Era T. P.S. Say hi to Cal. Era T, thank you very much for the letter. It's a really good question. A lot of people ask me how to appreciate darker, more experimental, more abrasive styles of music, occasionally which I do review, and I am a very big fan of. Here's the thing. This is a really huge, gigantic conversation in which there are a load of different issues to be addressed. So, of course, I could not just do this exploration by myself. I brought on Mr. Mike Rugnetta of the PBS Idea channel. You can find his stuff down there in the description box, and we are going to have a lovely conversation as to how one should go into these styles of music, mind frame wise, and go about appreciating them. Transition! And here we are with the magic of the internet. We are speaking with Mike Rugnetta of the Idea channel right now, and we're going to be attacking philosophically this email that I read to you guys.
attacking in a nice way.
Mike and I mutually are pretty big fans of a lot of the genres of music that were mentioned in this email, but I think a lot of the same mental preparation goes into enjoying each of them, but I mean that's at least my perspective. Mike, what kind of mindset do you put yourself into, or what do you go into free jazz or drone or noise or lowercase sort of expecting or wanting to hear? What kind of emotions are you looking to feel moved?
Huh, that's a really good question. You know, I don't know at this point because like a lot of these kinds of musics, like, you know, especially noise and drone, like those are things that when I put on music, like I am probably just likely to put on one of those things. So like it's not, I don't think I have like a special like feeling that I'm trying to get or like a mindset that I'm in. But I think if I were to think back to like when I first started listening to those things, you know, like I think that what got me into a lot of that stuff is feeling like there was more to pay attention to. Mm-hmm. Which I really like. Like there's different ideas and more different ideas going on than in, you know, whatever I was listening to before. You know, like I probably like pop electronic music or whatever, you know, whatever the alternative was for me at the time. Mm-hmm. And so yeah, it was like, you know, it was something like not like an intellectual exercise, but there was like more for me to like grab onto and wrestle with and be challenged by, which I found and still find really exciting.
Well, I mean, I could totally understand that feeling because, you know, as much as we try to act like there are these really bold, clear borders separating all of these really popular styles of music, the fact of the matter is that they all function on a lot of the same characteristics, be they verses and choruses, or really strong thematic melodies, or like a really catchy lyrical hook, or even like a constant repetition of certain rhythms, whether they be like a guitar riff or sort of just like a backing melody or a drum beat. And at least in my personal experience, seeking out these genres, all of them really except Lowercase. I'm not even going to pretend I'm well versed in that. Just not going to act like it.
There's not a whole lot of Lowercase like happening. You know what I mean? Like it's not like there's not a ton out there, so it makes sense that like of the grouping, like that's the one that you're like, oh, I don't know.
I know it's the more recent of the three genres, and
Yeah.
and I know that a lot of the stuff that is out there tends to be mixed a bit with other genres too.
Mm-hmm.
So you know, it's so there are very few records that are just like purely Lowercase, but still.
And I think much like free jazz, it's one of those labels that either some or all of the people who have been labeled Lowercase are like, you know, they're a little like, well, I don't know about that.
Yeah. I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is, I mean, whenever I've seeked out these three genres, and when I started seeking out these genres, it was mostly for the desire of adventure. If there's any kind of advice I have for anybody going into these styles of music who like might listen to any of the records that we're recommending down in the description box, do not go into it expecting to be thrilled in the same way you would a really good pop song with like an explosive, catchy hook. I feel like people go into like a noise record assuming that they're going to get the same kind of gratification, and when they don't feel it, that they're thinking that, oh, I must not get it or something.
I think that's like at least at first that's like a really fair thing to say, because right, like growing up you are just subjected to pop music. Like it's basically part of the landscape, and it is a thing that you are trained culturally to understand, right? Like this is like what a sad song is and makes you feel like, this is what a triumphant or glorious song is and makes you feel like. And there aren't as many of those shortcuts as there are in like more difficult genres of music, or more more like experimental, I guess, genres of music. But like that can also be a way to get in. Like I studied, so when I studied music in college, one of the people in my composition program was this dude who used to play piano for Cecil Taylor, and he had this really like intense playing style where he was like attacking the piano, and it was like this really fast, like really aggressive style of music. And so lots of people found their way into what this guy John was playing, because they were like, yeah, like that's brutal, like that's like it's so aggressive, and like there's so much emotion. But he would always get really mad, because to him that was not anger or aggressiveness. That was not like I'm like the punk rock style of like I'm fed up and so I play aggressively. For him, that was the way to make like interesting and different music. And so, once you can get past that aspect of it, you start to figure out like, oh, it's not just, like free jazz, not just angry sounding music. Like it's actually, there's a sort of like what you said, there's that intellectual, it repays thinking about, and not just that visceral like body thing that we're used to with a lot of music.
Well, speaking about just free jazz in general, one of the things that I get out of listening to either jazz that is purely free or just more progressive styles of jazz that feature elements of that, where there might be parts of the composition that are left completely up to chance. Rather than just sort of the simple, sweet aggression or catharsis that comes with a pop tune, I'm getting more of a, like you said earlier, kind of this mental challenge. You're getting more to think about, and you're getting more to think about not necessarily because the artist might have put more thought into what they're doing versus what the pop artist did. The reason that music like this tends to fry your brain a little bit is because your brain is constantly trying to catch up with the music that it's listening to and figure out patterns. I mean, that's essentially what your brain is doing when you listen to music. It's deciphering patterns in every single set of sounds that is being played. And when you listen to something as disorienting as free jazz, or like a noise song where the noises tend to not really draw on in a really kind of elongated way, but more like sort of jut and are sporadic and really difficult to predict, that becomes something that people are either really drawn in by and have to like sort of zoom in on really hard just to kind of like make sense of what's going on, or it's something that people like ultimately, or just not ultimately, but instantly disgusted by, and that's where the reaction, this isn't music, sort of comes from.
Yeah, or I read, I've been reading over the last little while, this guy, I think it's David Stubbs, wrote Fear of Music, which is basically all about why people will look at a Rothko or a Jackson Pollock painting and be like, I don't like it, but I can understand the artistic value in it, like sort of as a general attitude towards more challenging visual art. But you play someone more challenging music from the same period, and like Stockhausen or something, and the response is like, this is nonsense.
Well, that I've actually talked with friends about that before, and the reason I think that something like that is because just some of the demands, I think there's higher mental demands when it comes to listening to music than looking at a painting. And when I say that, I mean more from like a layman's standpoint, because I mean a song, if it's an avant-garde experimental 20-minute song, in order to be finished with it, you've got to sit there the whole time and listen to it for the full 20 minutes. Whereas with a painting, it can be the most experimental thing that's ever been created, and somebody can just glance at it and be like, no, I looked at it.
Right.
It's like, when looking at a painting, I mean, I'm sure somebody who is more visually attuned than I am can look into a painting and get the same level of stimuli in their brain that I would from a really experimental piece of music. But, your average person, if they're not attuned in that way, then they're just going to look at the painting and kind of decide on their own pace when they're done. But if somebody is a painter, there are all these various subtleties in the execution of the painting that they'll notice and pick up on and sort of read into really deeply.
Yeah, I also think that, like there's a fair amount of visual training that, like our culture is a very, very visual one, even though, music is everywhere. And so I think, like that also has a lot to do with it. We're sort of, our acceptance, or at least familiarity with visual complexity, I think it's fair to say is higher than our familiarity or acceptance of, totally, like audio, aural complexity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean that's a definite possibility. So do you personally, like I just mentioned, get anything emotionally or mentally from listening to music that is more difficult to predict, or sort of more difficult to kind of see what it's going to be throwing at you down the road?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's that's kind of the thing that I'm like always, that might be the reason that I listen to the music that I do, because there was a moment for me where like pop music almost stopped working. Like that feels like a really shitty thing to say, but it's kind of like I don't know, maybe I just lost interest in song form. And it's not that I don't like it, and it's not that I don't, like I love Ryan Adams, which is like for someone who listens to lots of like noise music, also loving Ryan Adams seems like a conflict of terms, but like I do, and so I can appreciate that. But the thing that I'm always looking for when listening to like other genres of music like these is like ways to get those emotions and ideas from like more complicated like sonic like experiments or sonic assemblages or whatever you want to call them.
That's interesting, because I mean you know, to be completely honest, most of the time, I mean, pop music still very much works for me, despite, you know, listening to a great deal of it, a great deal of music that fits into that, you know, structure a lot of the time. But when I listen to these other genres of music, I don't really connect with them in the same way emotionally that I would a pop song, even if I'm really trying to or looking for moments in it that would normally. I mean, a lot of the time, I mean, I do find excitement in this kind of music, but it's mostly the excitement of, I mean, with artists like this, they're pushing sonic and compositional boundaries, you know? And to me, listening to an artist that works so far outside of that normal pop music structure is kind of just like visiting a new place. You know, it's just like going someplace that you've never ever seen before. You know, I remember when I first started listening to Sun, and a really good buddy of mine who initially, like, you know, ruined my life when he turned me on to punk music. You know, he was just like asking me what the hell was the appeal in any of this. And I was just like, you know, I said, because who else is making the sound? You know, like, I mean, and you know, I mean, I feel like appreciating their music runs much deeper than that. But when I first started getting into them, that was like my first reaction.
Right, because my brain identifies this as a thing that it has never experienced before.
Yeah, exactly.
I think,
you know,
sorry, go ahead. Jinx, you you hang up first.
I'll go on.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like the other side of this coin that we have to talk about is, I mean, we talked about the styles of music that were mentioned in this email that are more sporadic and more predictable, but there's another side to at least two other of the genres here, especially drone, and that is, I mean, this music isn't sporadic or unpredictable. Instead, it's the exact opposite. Drone really thrives on sameness a lot of the time throughout an entire composition. And as interesting as it is, I imagine for you, you may like it more or less than these other experimental styles of music, but I'm sure it draws from a different place emotionally.
I wonder. Yeah, I mean, I think so. Like, just to go back like a step or two. Maybe it's not that pop music stopped working, but that I stopped being surprised.
Yeah.
In that sense, like I stopped, and like, you know, the things that I find now where it's pop music that is surprising, like those are things that I still love because, you know, like, of course, I don't want to say of course I love pop music, but like, of course, to a certain degree, everybody kind of has a relationship with pop music. You almost kind of have to.
Yeah.
And I think that your description of like it's like going to a new place is really spot on, because for, you know, music like noise and drone and these other things, you know, I think that you can, when you get out of the like 4-piece band song structure thing, you can start to create noises and sounds and like sonic landscapes and even places that are more surprising than you could ever get with, right, like the standard band setup and the pop song format. And that in that sense, I think you really can create like complex emotional content. It's just really different from what we're used to getting from music, like as most of us think of what music is.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, and that's part of what you know, like John Cage wrote about, like in Silence, right? Like it's all, when you realize that every single sound is music, then the world of music becomes much more complex and much more meaningful.
Mm-hmm.
And so as far as drone is concerned, you know, for me, that genre is like spans all kinds of reaction. You know, like the thing I'm listening to a lot right now, which is which I recommended, so it's probably in the description. Is the Total Life Radiator record, which is like this awesome, like sort of slow changing square and sawtooth wave drone that is like for any given 15-second chunk, really really simple, but has this kind of glacial movement and progression to it. And for me, that's like that's like shutting out the world and just like living in this machine kind of thing. And so the emotion for that is, like that really makes me feel like I'm getting something done, like I'm really doing something, even if I am literally just sitting there listening to it. But then there are things like Eliane Radigue or Radigue, and her work can at times just be like heartbreaking. And it's an hour and 17-minute long drone, and just for whatever reason, there's this progression of resonances that she set up on her synthesizer that are just like, so evocative.
That's the thing. I feel like on the surface, and there is some drone that is like that, people assume that the entire genre is just like one note continuing on for an eternity. And there are some artists that, that go down that road. Yeah. There are some artists whose drones tend to be a little more thinner and atmospheric. There are some, like I just mentioned, like Sun, who I recommend in the link down there, as well as Earth, whose approach to the style is much more aggressive and, really, I want to say a lot of drone music tends to run on the more ambient side of things, whereas they are just like very forceful with the presentation of the style. And, I would say just like any other style of drone, their music is like really numbing, it's meditative. And then there are artists like you just mentioned, and I think in a sense Tim Hecker too, where there are elements of drone in their music, a really strong drone influence, but there's like composition hidden in there, really clear, concise composition that's actually really beautiful.
Yeah, and I think one of the other people that I recommended, Herrmann Niche, I really like him for like introduction to drone, because he picked a beautiful instrument, the harmonium, and he picks really beautiful harmonies and then just holds them. And it's kind of like saying, hey, like if this thing is beautiful, which it is, like why not just listen to it for a while? And like see what happens, see what kind of like musical understanding or personal experience or whatever you can get out of like this pretty thing happening for a pretty long time. And I think that's also a really great sort of it's a great use of musical time.
Yeah, it's I think the more pretty, sonically beautiful, more ear candy side of drone music, like you were saying earlier, some of these more avant-garde styles of music, you can catch similar emotions from them that you would from a pop song, but in some instances these emotions are pushed to an extreme. Like with the, to be completely honest, last year I don't think I heard a record that I thought that was more sonically pretty to listen to than that Tim Hecker record.
Oh man, Virgins is so good.
Yeah, it's very pretty to listen to. It's a very pretty record to listen to on a lot of those tracks. And even though there's plenty of pretty music that that I think exists in the pop world, the pop realm, there's something about just kind of stretching a lot of these sounds out and just allowing them to kind of grow on you and just build momentum and build tension with you, that you get out of a drone. So drone music just much more laid back, meditative, predictable, but in all the right ways. And I think we should maybe dive a little bit into noise music before we get out of this, which can be at times just as sporadic as free jazz, but is not nearly as harsh compositionally, because a lot of these artists aren't necessarily working with tones in the chromatic scale. Instead, their compositions are based around sound effects and textures, and I think that in itself brings a different kind of disorientation than something like purely improvisational music does.
Right. I was thinking about this earlier today, and I didn't recommend it for noise music, but I really because it's not technically noise music, but I think it's a really great way to get into it, which is Pierre Schaeffer. Do you know Pierre Schaeffer? He was like the forefront of this type of music composition in Paris in the 20th century called musique concrète.
Yeah.
Which was basically like when people realized that they could take a tape recorder out into the world and record sounds in the world and then go back to the studio and slow them down, speed it up, re-record, like splice the same section over and over again, that this opened up a whole world of sound for in-studio audio composition, and that's how tape music, right, became a thing. And it's so like it's such awesome like proto noise ideas in the sense of, you know, it is right. It's non-musical sounds, like classically non-musical sounds, treated as compositional elements.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, most definitely. And you know, and I do realize that was sort of the I guess sort of the primordial soup that noise music kind of came out of. But maybe what this dude might be talking about is more like I know you recommended Merzbow.
Yeah.
In your list, and I recommended Prurient, you know, both artists who tend to be on kind of the more harsh and just like grating side of things. And I mean, I don't know, with me personally, I mean, sometimes with noise music like that, I kind of, after a long time, will get the same reaction from like that I would from a drone song in a sense, where I don't know, it's like at least maybe with a free jazz song, I'm hearing some kind of tones. I feel like after a while with like a really intense noise song, my brain just like completely just shuts down. Where it's like,
when you like stop listening, like you just don't hear it anymore?
Not even if I stop listening, I just feel like my brain just like I feel like maybe either my brain completely shuts off or my brain has either shut down every single part of my head outside of my auditory senses just to figure out what the hell is going on.
All right.
And there's something about reaching that kind of like mental plane that's almost like a really weird high. Like I don't feel like when I'm in that state, I don't feel like anything else exists.
I can identify with that. When I was in college, I used to actually put on the Merzbow record that I recommended to take a nap in the afternoon. Like I would put that on in my room, and my neighbors hated me in college. And then like, you know, crank it, and then yeah, it would get to that point where it's just like my brain maybe just shut out. You know, it was like, okay, I have to, in order to deal with this, I have to turn off conscious acknowledgement of the arms, and now also the legs, and now the world, and then I'm asleep.
So I mean, I think I mean, and that's the thing about this kind of music. I don't think what makes it so great sometimes, and this is also what makes it difficult for people to get into it, I think. I feel like with noise music and avant-garde styles of music, there's an even less agreed upon way to feel about it and enjoy it, which is why it's so much more difficult to make the transition from pop music to noise music.
Right, like when you go to a punk rock show and it's like a really aggressive punk rock show, it's clear that like there is some sort of like you know, fuck the man, and like, you know, like I have like these.
You see the reaction to it that you should be having.
Yeah, like aggressive political ideas. Like there's a sort of canon of reaction to the music. Whereas with noise music, it's like somewhere maybe in the punk rock realm, but also maybe somewhere in the metal realm, but also maybe somewhere in the art music realm. You know.
No, definitely.
Okay.
I think you know, I think so much of, like you said earlier, you know, because how we are indoctrinated with into pop music, into enjoying pop music, you know, we sort of learn without even understanding how to enjoy it. You know, like by
Right.
picking up on other people's social cues and learning which parts are supposed to be more enjoyable than other parts, and which are the parts that everybody sings along with, and which are the parts that stick in your head after you're done listening to it. Whereas with noise music, I mean, it doesn't play by any of these rules. So people go into it assuming that they don't get it when maybe the intention is
You don't get it.
more obvious than you think.
Yeah.
It's just that you either haven't found out how to get the same emotional thrill out of it, or you're just looking for the wrong emotional thrills out of it. And you know, I would say when listening to any of these styles of music, I mean, you're not going to, no matter how many times you listen to Sun and Boris's Altar, you're never going to get the same, you know, kind of enjoyment out of it that you would like a good Rolling Stones record. You know, you have to kind of sit with it and then figure out, you know, how exactly you personally react emotionally to it, and what. I don't know. I feel like I'm having a difficult time like saying this really clear idea in my head out of my mouth.
I don't know. I don't know if I agree, because I think, you know, the first time I ever listened to Boris, like I had like a really strong reaction to it. Like like I had a really strong. I mean, I guess it was probably an emotional reaction because it was a reaction, and that I've never had from like a good Rolling Stones record or like a really great Beatles record.
Well, I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's like you can have a really strong emotional reaction. It's just that I feel like some people go into this stuff looking for the same emotional reaction.
Oh, I see what you're saying. That the actual
like one of their favorite records in like classic rock or something.
And I think another part of that a lot of times goes unsaid is that a lot of this music doesn't have lyrics, and for a lot of people that is like the thing that they listen to, and that's it. And so and so you are then on like sort of a faltery ground, because not only is it slightly difficult and different, it also doesn't have a human voice saying recognizable words a lot of the time. To your last point, I've seen like Wolf Eyes and Wolf Eyes related side projects, of which there are
many
at this point, maybe hundreds. I've seen them live a bunch of times, and the like audience like reaction or the audience like attitude has run the gamut. Like I've been to Wolf Eyes performances where there was a mosh pit, and then Wolf Eyes performances where everyone was like sitting very quietly, like they're in a gallery. Actually, it was in a gallery, so maybe that had something to do with it. So right, there it is. Like it was in so there's one like in the basement.
That's not necessarily the decider though, because I've seen a mosh pit at an Andrew WK show in an art museum.
So
but it was Andrew WK.
Where's Andrew WK?
Mosh pit, just that guy wherever he goes.
Like more to your point of like it's the way to enjoy this music is maybe not so clearly telegraphed from the music itself, which might be part of its beauty, right? That it is sort of vexing and inscrutable in that sense. Mm-hmm. I tend to think of, right, if the thing that's impressive about lots of free jazz is that you're listening to, or like non-idiomatic instrumental music, whatever you want to call it, is that like, oh man, like whoa, they can do that with acoustic instruments.
Yeah.
Like you know that this is a drummer and a guitar player, but when you listen, you're like, whoa, what are they doing? Like that's cool. Like I didn't know that you could get that sound from that thing, and I didn't know that when you put them together, you get that kind of form. A lot of noise music is, I think, it's very fair to have the same reaction where you're like, what even is that sound? Like how do you get that? And like, how do you decide to put it in this compositional like frame or this format? And like, you know, just sort of the mystery of it is also, I think, really appealing and really exciting.
Yeah, again, that plays into the whole visiting a new place thing. I mean, you know, and this is just purely my reason, and maybe this will be somebody else's reason who watches this video, who might go into some of these records that we recommend. You know, I seek this music out occasionally because, you know, sometimes I just want something that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes I want to break from things that like make sense.
The world is not an ordered and fair place, so.
No. You know, it's like a friend of mine says, Dominic, who has a drawing channel on YouTube. You know, he's pretty passionate about talking about sort of the beginning of the Impressionist movement.
Okay.
Where he talks about how things like this started because people were tired of drawing things as exactly how they looked. And that's the thing that I like about more experimental music like we've been talking about. Sometimes I don't want an instrument to sound the way it's supposed to sound. Sometimes I want a sound that I can't, after multiple listens, I cannot figure out its origin. And even if that origin a lot of the time ends up being a computer or something, I would not even know what to do in order to make that sound come out of a computer in the first place.
Yeah.
And not that mystery, is the best weapon that this stuff has to offer. Sometimes people who make this music, understand its ins and outs, but yet it still retains its entertainment value. But that's also because it's also surprising and unpredictable as well, and it's explorative. And some people just like the idea of that. Go into this kind of music with the idea of exploring in your head, and I think you're going to get a lot more out of it than you would if you came into it expecting to bob your head at it at some point.
Right. Yeah, and to be like, oh, like, yeah, yeah, exactly. It's like I think it was Kandinsky wrote about how as a painter he was jealous of music because it was the only truly abstract art form, and I think that's we've come a long way from when that statement was made, and so it might not be as true as it was then when painting was basically like you draw people and forms and figures, but I think that's part of it, is that it exists in the air, not in front of your eyes, and a lot of this music is the furthest expression, the end point of that idea, where it's like, if music is the only truly abstract art form, what is its most abstract instance?
And what is and another interesting thing that I feel like we should mention before we head out is that a lot of these experimental styles of music, for as long as they've been around and for as unpopular as they've been in the mainstream for pretty much all of their existence, all of them, a great deal, have influenced very popular mainstream and underground records. A lot of popular artists tend to be influenced by the more experimental sounds that they're hearing, and then find out ways to incorporate them into more accessible compositions, whether that be in the psychedelic rock movement, in the noise rock movement, in shoegaze, in all the experimental production that we're hearing coming out of hip-hop right now. These styles of music sonically have influenced tons of records that are incredibly popular and critically acclaimed and influential across the board.
Word. I agree.
Word, word, word. All right. I want to thank Mike Rugnetta for coming on again.
I want to thank you for having me on. It's been a real pleasure.
And we need to do one of these hangout things face to face.
Just in real like meat zone.
In real meat zone.
Yeah.
Where I need to make you deliver on your promise to play me the disintegration loops in person.
I can look. It's like 5 feet away. I can go
right there. I feel it. I'm so close and yet so far. That's how I feel right now. It's right there. Oh my god.
Here it is.
That copy that I told you about at my local record store, it's still sitting there, and it's still like $300.
Yo, no, get it from Discogs. It'll be at least half price. Here's the book. Here, we'll find. There's a good picture in here somewhere.
Oh my god. A good picture. A picture of what?
Like blurry London.
Of course there's a blur.
Here, there's a really good picture of Basinski himself.
Oh, nice.
It's blurry though.
It's not that blurry. It's okay.
There you go. So close yet so far.
Yes, exactly. All right, I will again remember everybody. I left links down there in the description box to where you can see the artists that Mike has recommended, some of the records that I have recommended, and remember to subscribe to the Idea channel. And when you see Mike's latest video, leave him a compliment.
Aw.
Leave him a compliment.
I'm going to now leave you all the compliments.
Thank you. All right, everybody. Anthony Fantano, Mike Rugnetta, experimental music, forever.